All right, I think we'll start our recording and we'll get underway. Yeah, let me just sort of get into things. We're really excited about this panel today and the opportunity for all of you who have participated as scholars in our EA Post Scholars Program, or for those of you who are mentors, to it's a bit of a kind of a celebration, a thanks, an opportunity to share and reflect back about the positives, the challenges, and the overall process of doing something different in your classroom, whether that was content or pedagogy, and kind of hear from others and talk together about that. We also know that some people listening in today live, or we're recording this, as you heard me just start the recording a minute ago, maybe using this as an opportunity to kind of learn about the program, hear from others who went through it as they consider making some changes in their own statistics class. So we've prepared 6 questions in advance, and we've assigned each of our panelists today to one of those questions. And so everyone's going to take an opportunity to just briefly tell a little bit about what they did, and then kind of with a specific sort of answer to the question. Due to the large number of scholars who are reporting today, which we're really excited about, but we also want to stay on time and be done within the next 60 minutes. I'm going to give each of the scholars 3 minutes. I will try as best I can to give you a 30-second warning. If you're wondering where you are, I'll just quietly say 30 seconds or something like that while you're talking. So if we can do that, then we'll have a few minutes at the end for additional live Q&A. But to provide an opportunity in this format with a lot of people reporting, we want everyone to use the chat for Q&A. So if you've got a question for one of the scholars about something they said, or you're curious about it, you can just go right to the chat while they're talking or afterwards and continue the conversation there as we transition immediately to the next scholar. And again, I'm going to be a little bit of a crack in the whip today to make sure we get through everyone. I want to have all of our scholars an equal opportunity to share. So again, each of you scholars, you've got 3 minutes. Your name will be on the screen. So you'll kind of know when you're up next, so you can be ready. You can just unmute. For everyone else, I would just ask you to stay muted until the very end, that last 5 or 10 minutes. As time permits, I'll have a few concluding remarks, then we can do a little bit more live Q&A as you wish. So I think with no further ado, we will get started here with our first question. And then we've got a couple of our scholars, Nadashani, Joss, and Greg will be responding to this in that order. And so if you could, when you start, and so Nadashani, since you're first, I'll sort of put you on the spot with this, but for all of the scholars, just give a little bit of who you are, where you're from, a little bit about your class. You don't have a lot of time, and then comment specifically about what did you do, and then that specific question that's on the screen. And again, we'll try to keep everybody to about 3 minutes. All right, Nadashani, there you go.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nadishani Jayasena, a teaching assistant professor at Portland State University in Oregon. I have been teaching various statistic courses from lowest level to master's level. And for this activity, I use the algebra-based business statistic course, which is offered fully online with no scheduled meetings. And then again, our students, those are not traditional students. They have multiple jobs and other responsibilities. So therefore, I use flexible due dates in this class. And I also have never attempted to do any group activities in this class. And so this one was also not a group activity. And usually the students in this class, they read a lecture note, complete 1 or 2 homework assignments, and a quiz every week if there is no exam. And for this activity, for this work, I use the activity Can Dogs Detect COVID-19 from Beth Chance. And I use that to teach binomial distribution because this class, we are still teaching, probability first few topics. Statistical inference is too far away from the term yet. So when I was modifying the activity, so like I said, this is a fully online class. So I had to create a quiz on Canvas so that students can provide their answers or select the answers and get a feedback right away, like if they were doing in person. So that's one major thing that I had to do it for this online class. Then the other thing is, when I was creating those questions, I had to think about what are the possible wrong answers, and also I had to spend time to create detailed feedback so that they get a feedback right away, like if they were doing a in class in person activity. Um, and also, I divided this activity into 3 parts because it's a little bit longer. Before the activity, they were supposed to read the lecture note and then complete the assignment, and then they could complete other assignments from that topic. And I did not use Rosman Chan's app for this activity, but I use another online app that I also learned from your group, where they could shuffle different colors of items in a bag and then select randomly different items and then count how many successes. And another thing I had to change in this activity was
30 seconds.
the original research paper had 57 trials and 47 successes, which gives you a very small probability to estimate if the probability of success was 1/4. And I had to make a change here so that there are 10 trials and 4 successes. If so, how do they learn to compute probabilities? I think my time is up.
Yes, right on time. Wonderful. Thank you, Nadashani. And again, if you've got questions or comments for her, you can take them to the chat, but we'll move right on to Joss.
Thank you, Nathan. Hi, everyone. I'm Jazz Panum. I'm associate professor, just got promoted, associate professor at Sacramento State University. So I mostly teach both lower division and upper division stat courses. So this semester, I was actually teaching a special cohort of which belongs to Black Honors College, which is our new college on campus. I was really excited to experiment, new things in this class because it was a new population. So the activity that I chose for this was crime scene investigations, making predictions, where they were to explore measures of center and variability, mean, median, and standard deviation, variance. So the modifications that I had to do, they were very minimal. I feel like the activity in itself was complete. Like I really had to make very minimal modifications. Maybe just adding small breakdown points for clear instructions and smaller steps. And I also posted the activity on Canvas and gave a print handout as well for accessibility reasons. And maybe I put some references in the handout itself that for the figures, so they can easily refer to which figure we were talking about. But other than that, I think the activity went really well. I do a lot of group work in my classes. So this activity was in alignment with my teaching pedagogy. Students were enjoying it. They get a chance to look at all these measures from a different point of view, not just from the theoretical point of view. So they could see where they could use these measures in real life. I think crime scene investigation was a great exercise. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jazz. All right, and now we'll go on to our third respondent, Greg.
Hello, my name is Greg Konopchinsky. I work at Georgia Southern University in Georgia, of course. This class I taught was a face-to-face intro level course. I've been teaching that class for quite a while. The students are used to doing group work. We do a lot of in-class group work, so they were used to that. And we had also already done some simulation applications to show how the system, basically how estimation works through these applets. So they weren't new to all this, but the project I did was the Can Chimpanzees Solve Problems, which is an introduction to hypothesis testing. And they had very little access or very little information about hypothesis testing prior to it. So I think they enjoyed the project because it was something new and different. As far as making changes to the modifying the information that was given to me, I did have to make some changes. I wanted to make some changes to the wording so that if students read ahead, they didn't know what the answers were to previous questions. I changed some of the formatting. I had to change the length of it because of the day that it fell on that we did this. I couldn't quite get through the whole process, but I got through most of it. And then I also added some stuff in, like we actually calculated the theoretical probabilities of these things, of Sarah getting 7 out of 8. That was the question, using our binomial distribution to show that the theoretical probabilities come really close to what the simulation probabilities were, just to let them emphasize it's like two different ways to find the same answer. And it gives us more, I'm not sure what the word is, more confidence in our simulation methods then to show that this really is working like it's supposed to work. But otherwise, I think the students really enjoyed it. We got a lot of feedback, good feedback. They loved getting up and being able to move across the room and put dots on the board and stuff like that, that we normally don't do. They usually don't get out of their seats much. So that was good for them to actually get out of their chair once in a while. Otherwise, I thought it went really well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Greg. For the other panelists, I did put in the chat the order of the next questions and when you're up, just so you can be ready and not wondering if you're going to be called on next, kind of that fear we all have when we're in the class, right? All right, we'll move on to question 2. So for Sophia and Andre, if you could comment on the main characteristics of your context and how you implemented it. And again, just provide a little bit of introduction to your class, who you are, and kind of the context you used when you start your response. Sophia.
So hi everybody, Sophia Georgia Kaki. I am from Tompkins Cortland Community College, so the 2-year college, teaching Intro to Stats. I teach it both in person and online, but this semester I only had taught it online. I did a statistical investigation last year where the class was in person and we used groups, but for this completely asynchronous online, I actually just assigned it as a homework assignment. And we had just finished the first half of the course, which is descriptive statistics, and we were starting the second half of the course. My assignment was, is yawning contagious, which is an investigation, a hypothesis test for a 2 population proportion. I had to do significant changes to get that. So it was individual work. It was not group work since we weren't in a classroom. I wanted students. So my mentor, Annelise, was extremely helpful trying to coach me to make it as fun as possible for students. And I don't know, mid-semester how fun it would be. So I had to convert everything to online. I had to do as much multiple choice as I could. I didn't have a lot of room for them to just find their own, do their own experiment and have an open-ended answer that would be marked correct by the computer. So for though I had some questions that I was grading myself, they had to submit their graphs by hand and in Excel, try to use all the possible ways of technology. We used the Rossmann Chance apps. We do use other apps, but they don't have simulation. And I wanted them to be exposed to a simulation problem. So first we watch Annelise's video where she does a simulation manually. And I was just checking to make sure that they actually watched the video. Then we had them use the Rossmann Chance apps. So one thing that was a significant change was that we start the second half with central limit theorem, with confidence interval, with hypothesis testing for 1 population. And the actual activity was hypothesis testing for 2 populations. I broke the whole activity over 4 weeks. So slowly just to get them to remember descriptive statistics and then how would you use them to get them thinking. So we didn't do hypothesis test until the 4th week. And I had to rearrange the book, the Wiley book, to most closely align to Beth Chance's lab so that they don't do hypothesis test until the very last week. I thought it was very interesting. All the students did it. It was an addition to the class. It was part of their homework grade. So it was a good experience. I had very good outcomes, actually.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sophia. Andre.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andre Matherin. I teach at Hillsborough Community College in Tampa, Florida. The context of the class was it was an evening in-person class. Because it was in person at night tends to be less traditional students, so a lot of students who are working during the day, etc. Class size was fairly small, about 14 or 15 were there that night. As far as the main characteristics, so originally I had wanted to do this as an introduction to before we started hypothesis tests, but because of timing and other stuff, it ended up we had already covered hypothesis tests for proportions. So this was kind of at the end of that before we started going into a lot of detail with t-tests. But what it really was nice was being able to have the students, they already knew the format of the test. And one of the things I've been trying to really emphasize to them is, sampling distributions, and we really need to pay attention to the standard error and how the standard error changes. So this activity that I did was the Hubble Space Telescope proposal and gender, and seeing the effect of sample size and how that can change whether how significant or strong evidence is. Probably the biggest struggle I had was to not want to lead the class through it and let them do it on their own. The students really enjoyed it. At the end, I think it was something better than what I originally do. And the students were really engaged, and we got to talk about the Hubble telescope, a little bit of history. As far as follow-up, that's one of the things that I probably should have done a little bit more of in terms of follow-up. But for me, it introduced me to this new Google Desmos Classroom, which I thought was really great. And I think that's about all I want to say.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Andre. Again, I'll just encourage you, if you do have questions or comments for anybody, mentors, panelists, just get those going in the chat. But we'll go to our next panelists, Karen and Pat, talking about the knowledge the activity assumed and kind of where the modules, where the activity sat, sort of in the context of their broader class. Karen.
Okay, so I'm Karen Benway. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Vermont. I used Laura's Hubble telescope activity in 3 sections of my statistics and social justice course, which is the most introductory level statistics course of all the introductory statistics courses that we have. We have several that UVM has. It draws mostly students in the arts, some in the social sciences and education, but people who are not generally people who consider themselves to be math people. Each of the classes has between 50 and 55 students in them, and we do regularly do activities working in small groups of 2 to 4. In terms of the knowledge that the activity assumed, it basically assumed that they had, basic vocabulary about talking about data. It assumed that they knew about sampling from a population. It assumed that they had some familiarity with sampling distributions and standard error, and also with hypothesis testing, that they knew how to formulate hypotheses, that they understood what a p-value was already, seemed to be assumed. And that they could use a p-value to evaluate the strength of evidence and draw conclusions. So, and my students had covered all of the material before they did the activity. So it fit in there nicely. In terms of how they received it, I would say I have a lot of non-binary students in my classes, and they did not like that the name of the variable was gender, not sex, if it was binary. And then a couple of other things, they also were a little bit unimpressed by the magnitude of the difference between the groups. And so that led to actually a good discussion about practical versus statistical significance, and who gets to, like, who decides what has practical significance. And so anyway, it was generally well received, and I thought it was a very good activity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Pat.
Hi, I'm Pat Buchanan. At Penn State University. I use this. I did the draft lottery example. In my Stat 240 class, which is an intro course for ag majors. So it actually went really well. I think I figured out better how to do these with these classes. But they had to watch a video and read a short snippet on the draft lottery, and then I brought the handout, which I really did not modify to class, and so I kind of just facilitated with him with the applets that they seen them before, but we kind of worked together. So basically, what did I assume? They had seen simulation-based inference with one proportion. I used the applet already, and then comparing two means with the dung beetles and that. So the lecture before I did inference with correlation regression using the traditional approach, and then I said, well, you'll do that on your homework, but we're going to do something different on Friday. They have, had strong, grounding with inference, p-values, interpreting using the relative frequency approach. They understood when they were asked about cause and effect and generalization, they had that in their vocabulary. They also, I tried to stress with them when we did the 2-sample T that the randomization that they use in the simulation is not the same thing as random sampling. And so that kind of, when I brought that out, again, they said, okay. And that, so, I mean, it went really well. I mean, I basically had them write and I collected the handout. The one thing they struggled with is, because we do a lot with interpreting the p-values, like in the long run in this, but when they were two-sided, they were like kind of struggling with the language to kind of tweak that, even though they could find it on the applet. I only asked them 2 questions at the end, like what was your draft lottery number, and then what was surprising or not. So when I looked at their draft numbers and tallied them, I saw we had some common ones. So the next class, I actually did the birthday problem and that. So that was like, I haven't done that for years. That actually went well. But I mean, they said they loved it. They were, you always say you want to have a scatter plot with a correlation, but in this case, the scatter plot by itself was insufficient. So kind of working in opposition. They just loved the simplicity of the lab, but how it brought out some basic ideas. And they said they wish more labs could be done by that. So I was just very happy. It all just went well. And I didn't have them typing in Canvas all their answers. That just saved some time and that. So I thank Beth for recommending this activity because it went very, very well.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. We'll go on to question 4. Nellie, Christy, Olawale, you're up. How different was this activity from what your students usually do in class? Nellie, we'll start with you.
Everyone, I'm Nellie Gopal. I am a professor over here at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I did this activity. The activity I did was the Hubble telescope activity, which is comparing the acceptance rates in NASA proposals between male and female applicants or grant writers, so to speak. And I did it with my, it's an intro class for math majors, essentially. So they're relative, and ironically, they come in, and I think a lot of them don't really like statistics. One of my engineers just last week was like, this is the hardest math class. And I'm like, and he's getting an A by far. And, anyway, so I did it with my intro stats class for math majors. We also have math ed majors and our data science and statistics minors in there. And I did this towards the end of the semester. I did it this week. And so they already knew hypothesis testing. When I introduced hypothesis testing, I did simulation based with the pro-social baby study. And so I had them flip coins. So they kind of were used to stuff like that. With hypothesis testing, whenever there's proportions, I really love to try to have them do stuff. So it's a little bit different in the sense that we don't do that all year long, and it's harder to do simulation and randomization with when we're testing means. And then the week before, I had done the penguin study. Do metal bands harm penguins? Which also is, both of those are from a workshop I learned from Beth and Alan. And with the penguin study, I was able to give them playing cards, and I had them manually manipulate the two groups and reshuffling. And I did that with this study in mind, because I wasn't about to make 2,000 cards for them to times 15, or 15 pairs. So I did the manual manipulation with a different study the week before. And then in the penguin study, you kind of trick them, because you do a small sample. You have a small sample that doesn't reject the null. And then you have, oh, wait a minute, here's the full study that does reject the null. So in that sense, I feel like I had just done that to them the week before. But I think it was great. Of course, this is a very interesting topic, and somewhat different from all the definition stuff from the beginning of the semester. But as we get into hypothesis testing proportion, it is so nice to have these great data sets that are real life, that are manipulable, that are visual, that you can talk about. This small sample didn't reject the null, but the bigger one did, and talk about why we don't accept the null. I wanted them to get that too. So
Wonderful.
I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thanks, Nellie.
Okay.
Christy.
Hello, I'm Christy Seiler. I teach at UAlbany. It's actually only my second semester teaching there as a lecturer. It is the course that I teach is research design and statistics and psychology. So it's mostly social science students that are there. I'm a psychologist by day. So so we have a lot of social sciences individuals who have a lot of math anxiety and are not super excited to be in the statistics course to begin with. And it is undergraduate, so most of them don't have a huge amount of experience with statistics in that. So what I normally do, it's kind of hard to say simply because I am fully online asynchronous, and that's a new format essentially for UAlbany. So I don't know that there's a normal for me, so to speak. I think normally in this, it would have been, we use the Graviter text and the MindTap resource, and that's what they'd like us to do consistently throughout all the statistics courses. I would have used some of those examples from that. So what I really liked about the simulation is that it created, the visuals and all of that. That was very helpful. So what I ended up doing was the one proportion test and did can dogs learn the names of objects. So and so we were able to use that to look at probabilities and things like that, and that really helped to kind of highlight that. Because it's fully online asynchronous, it's hard to have meetings or have people answer questions and things. So what I did was create just the discussion post to answer the questions, to kind of go through all of that. And students seem to do really well with it, and they seem to respond favorably to the exercise. So I think it was very helpful for them to see, the sampling distribution and the probabilities and things like that and in real life versus just me doing a lecture, explaining it and showing pictures of things. So I think that was very helpful in the long run. So I think that's it. So
Wonderful. Thanks, Christy. Olawale, how was what you did here different from what you usually do?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I'm Olawale Olaniyan. For short, you can call me Ola. So I actually worked at an adjunct faculty at Grand Rapids Community College. It's a community college in Michigan, Grand Rapids specifically. So I taught statistics, and part of the topics I actually taught my students was to introduce them to scatter plots and correlation. I also taught them about residual plots, and spoke about explanatory variable and other things. So basically, for what we did differently, is actually number one. I want to mention that my students, they have a platform they use ordinarily, which is Alex. So Alex is assessment and learning in knowledge spaces. That is what they use ordinarily for the class. But for this practical time, what I did was actually to upload a PDF file of a document on the Blackboard, and then through that, they were able to access the link to the applet. So we worked on predicting height from foot length, using foot length. So they used the data, and then they were able to get scatter plots using the applet, and also get a correlation coefficient, because actually I introduced them into correlation coefficient. So that was a good time for them to use data to actually get an idea or get a feel of what the result is. So basically the prediction height using foot length is to have an idea, or just an idea about a study to predict the height of a criminal using the foot length from an event. So that was what we did. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Right, we'll move on. Question 5, Amber and Sanem. How do you think students responded to the activity? Amber.
Thank you. Well, we did 2 activities. So we also did the crime scene and we did the draft lottery. And for the crime scene, like I had a body bag and some crime tape. We had the footprint that a friend made with like some baking soda. And I think that's what they enjoyed the most, like, because they kept saying, oh, they had all these ideas of how else you could try to figure out who the criminal was. And they had a lot of ideas about that. So they really liked the hands-on kind of thing, like measuring the footprint. And I teach at a community college in Wyoming. And so we're only like 20 people in the class. And it is also a night class like Andre's. So we meet for a long, for 2 hours. And that way we do the whole experiment in one class. So, the feedback was really positive both times. I also did the draft lottery, and they had ideas to make it like to make it feel more like they were getting drafted or something. Of course, we looked at the video and we figured out who would have been drafted first. But they really liked the hands-on stuff. The things that I guess I would try to make it more group work. Like they really liked the draft lottery, how you work together to fill out the one table. Everybody had to fill out the table, part of it. And I would try to maybe make it more, it was pretty cooperative, but maybe I would try to make it more cooperative like that. And I would like to do the others where you had to gather your own data. We're only 20 people, so we'd have to like maybe add some bootstrapping or something like that into it because our sample size might be really small. But overall, it was overwhelmingly positive, and I think it's not totally different than what we did before, but to spend the whole class just having fun, they really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. Sanem.
Hi, I'm Sinem Demirci. I'm in Cal Poly, and this is my 2nd year as a lecturer. So I have an intro stat class, but for business students, and it is just stat 1 for them. And I had 2 activities. The first one was sleeping hours, and the second one was like related to backpack. So we have a quarter system, and I tried these activities on week 9 and 10, which was a little bit late for them. But for sleeping hours, we used real data. I asked them like, how many hours did you sleep last night? And their feedback was like very positive because they see where they are and then they see the distribution overall. And then with the backpack activity, so we conducted hypothesis testing, and in both activities, by the way, I used the 6 steps approach that we have in handouts and the book as well. So they also kind of like that 6 steps approach because it was like very close to finals week, and there was like just a review for them, right? So identifying research question, variables, observational units, sampling, exploring data, confidence interval, hypothesis testing, and generalization, and so forth. So they liked it like as a review for final. And we use Rossman and Chan Saplet for that. So it's also kind of easy, especially for non-majors, so they can easily see like what's going on. Yeah, overall it was positive.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. All right. On to our last couple of panelists, and then we'll have time to just open it up for Q&A and further discussion. But before we do that, Barbara and Ira, did you encounter any challenges with your implementation?
Hello, I'm Barbara Lydra, and I teach at the Community College of Baltimore County, and I'm a professor, and I'm in my 25th year, and I teach statistics for 25 years or more. So I still learned a lot through this, and this was great. But I didn't have only challenges. I had a lot of good things to say as well. So, but the challenges come first. So my first challenge was that I had to wiggle around a little bit. What do I need to do with my stuff that I teach before I actually had implemented the simulation? And I did the facial prototyping, p-value study with my students. So it was challenging because I did my presentation in my class yesterday. So I normally do have a 2-hour class. I meet them twice a week for 4 credits. And I normally do group work, but this was a little different. So my students are not used to getting 3.5 pages of notes that with questions to answer. So I did the printout for them and I guided them along, and it took a little while till they got used to this idea. But they really thought up and really had good questions when we got to the simulation. When they did the simulation with all of this, they were gung-ho on it, and they really asked great questions. Why do I get a different sample than you did? Why are my answers coming up different from yours? And did anybody else come up with different answers? So they were really thought-provoking things. And I liked the idea that they were really working together then. It was not just a communication and discussion, kind of a good mathematical discourse what we had in class, but it was really engaging. So the idea was that they were not used to the long questions, the 3.5 pages of questions. So they were more directly normally guided by me, but it was good in the end. Now, but I started up on a really bad note. I have to say this. Soma had given me a barcode to put into my PowerPoint. And I had tried this out the night before, and the barcode worked. And when I was in class, it didn't work. And I wanted to collect data from my students. So what are you going to do when you're going to be faced with some kind of real challenge?
30
so
seconds.
I had access to my email, and through my email, I could bring up the smart form. And on the smart form, the 2 faces were there and 2 names were there. So I did the old-fashioned way of who voted for Tim and who voted for Bob. And that was my way of how to do this. So I had more or less a backup plan, and I think that was good. I did not panic. I did not do any of this, but in the end, it worked out fine with the students. I think they liked the idea that they could work with the simulation, and that I think I would like to do more in the future. I would like to extend that simulation into the entire topics of inferential statistics. That's, if I can get this done, I think they would even like it more than what they did.
Wow, thanks for sharing, Barbara.
Well, I did what I did, I mean, for me, it was not easy, but I browsed through it, and I think altogether it was a good class for them, but they were not used to having to follow those long questions of pages of questions. And I think that was something that was challenging for them.
Good. Thanks for sharing. Ira.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So my name is Arad Bigmetiev. I'm Associate Professor of Mathematics and Statistics at Hope College, not far away from Grand Rapids. And so, right, so I'm teaching a lot of introductory statistics, but I also teach other courses in statistical programs that we have, more advanced courses, intermediate and advanced statistical classes, along with other math classes in the standard undergraduate math program. And so my activity was the draft lottery. And so I think overall it went very well. I think the discussion and it just somehow resonated with the students, the data themselves. And in fact, we had a very kind of interesting discussion about what looks like no association. And we had the class before, we had played the correlation game when they had to actually pretty successfully guess the correlation from the given scatter plot. And so when I showed this draft lottery data, they all confidently said that the correlation is almost zero and there is no association. And I started to like play devil's advocate, saying, what about this empty spot here? What about this empty spot here? And they said, let's do simulations, okay? The simulations designed to make this data looks like it has correlation zero. And I made it work in groups, so they had to kind of play, and they could see in the correlation how, in the simulations, how these empty spots disappear. And I would say, I will pick a couple of them and say, hey, guys, do you think that looks more no association than the one we had before? So we had a very good discussion about it, and people were very engaged. And I mean, the topic somewhat emotional, so they were like really rooting for for the draftees. And so we had a good discussion, and students were, I think, grasping the idea that it's not everything that meet your eyes is true. So you have to really be careful with the data analysis, and even the visual comparison of the simulations with the actual data was quite, after a while, they could see the difference. So overall, it was very positive experience. I mean, I followed the handout pretty closely, and I think it worked well. I didn't see any challenges there. If anything, the only challenge was I have a link in my slides to the NBC CBS what is it CBS News reporting on that draft lottery, and I was planning to watch that after we discuss it and kind of have an official kind of news outlet reporting on this. But to my surprise, several students in one of my sections watched that before. So they kind of read in advance the material of that section. And so they knew what's up. And so they revealed it to their groups. And one of the groups says, it was rigged. So that was probably somewhat of a challenge to, because I really wanted them to be surprised, but when they see how that is counterintuitive. But overall, it was very good experience.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. And thanks to all of you panelists for sharing. Just a real excitement and encouragement to me, and I know to the other mentors here as well, and I hope to those who are listening in today. Just a big thanks to all of you for being willing to take the plunge and try something different in your classes, whatever it was. Different pedagogy, different content, and big thanks to all of our mentors as well for giving you some guidance and encouragement and tips along the way, and just really appreciate the feedback from all of you about sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we say. So we've got some extra time. I'll say a really big thanks to everybody for being on time. I mean, way to go. Usually when I get professors talking, like, I mean, you've been there, right? This is why we like teaching. We just get to stand up and talk in front of the class until the kids leave. Anyway, we do have a few extra minutes. And so if we want to have some further discussion about things, I'll just pause here before I finish my concluding remarks and say if there's other questions you want to put in the chat, or just unmute, ask other panelists or other mentors about things that came up that struck you. I'll just pause here for a minute or two and see if any other questions are there.
Can I ask a follow-up question of Pat? You made the comment that you're now understanding how to do these activities more. As you've done more of them, you're starting to feel more comfortable. Can you say what that learning process has looked like, or what you've been learning more recently?
I mean, they were getting distracted by typing all their answers in the Canvas text boxes, and then they were losing, I think, really what they were trying to discover statistically in that. And so I finally realized, well, just give them the handout. I want them to write it and give it back to me, so I know that they took it and they tried to write everything out. But I still like getting the draft number and the feedback, but I think that the feedback's more important maybe than some of the other stuff I wanted to glean from them. And so that's why I was running out of time, and and then I think they're missing the point, of what the simulation was trying to accomplish in that. So I put that actually on me, just not really realizing, that I was adding a distraction there. But they all want more of them, so we're gonna have to find ways to keep doing it, because they like that approach.
That actually kind of gets to the question I had for really any of the panelists. As you think about the things that went well and that you liked, that you thought were effective for your students in terms of engagement, in terms of improving their learning, how are you going to build on this in future semesters? I guess, have you thought about that yet? I mean, it's kind of an unfair question. You're not even done with this semester yet. But I guess, how do you build on that momentum? What are some of those opportunities you see that you can challenge yourself with? And maybe if you want to comment on what are some of the barriers that might be in the way?
So one idea that I had was, as a result of this, was, how can I don't want to totally flip the classroom, because I know a lot of students, the point of them signing up for a face-to-face class is because they want someone to kind of show them how to do things, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm thinking of maybe every now and then kind of a flipped idea where maybe, the main lecture is something that they're going to watch for homework, and then follow it up with the activity, or vice versa, have the activity and have them follow up by looking at that. Because I'm always concerned about the time aspect of, an activity is great and they're really engaged, but I worry about the students who say, well, I came here to be taught, not really understanding that by engaging in the activity, they're actually getting more out of it, probably.
Yeah, great thoughts, Andre. Others? What do you think you might do next time to build on this experience? Or what are the barriers getting in the way of doing more or different next time?
The barrier for me is classroom. Like, can I get a better room for them, at least if they're all using their laptops or our lab? And sometimes I have to work hard with our scheduler to kind of find these open rooms after the semester begins. So that's my barrier. Otherwise I would do it regularly.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I would like to know, like, I forgot who said it, that if you read ahead in the questions that you would get the answer to the previous question. And I think that that would be helpful. Like, I would maybe modify things so you couldn't know what the answer was by the next question.
I want to do, I always want to do more of these, and and I always think, oh, maybe I should like open the semester with this kind of stuff because it's so interesting and it grabs their attention. And I struggle with knowing, like, these give such good intuition, and like they see it, right? When they manipulate the stuff and they understand more intuitively. And then at some point, don't I have to teach them how to crunch the numbers too? But that's not really learning per se. So that's a struggle for me. And then I would just say personally with this data set, in the state that I live, this data set was looking at acceptance rates between male and female. And at one point we reject the null and say, and Laura had a great write-up about why, we're not saying why. And she had great explanations that are very non-sex related. But I worry that, we have these such good real life data sets, and more we're being told you can't teach that, or that's instigative or threatening to some people. And it's what makes math and statistics interesting. And I hate that. I was actually really worried about this data set most of the semester. Like, do I need to talk to my department chair about it? And in the end, it was, no one has complained. I felt it was fine. No one seemed offended. But I hate that feeling of like some monkey in some department, just somebody that we don't know is making political decisions for us that are affecting how we teach. And I'm sorry, that wasn't a great word to use. I just mean someone who like doesn't know what's going on,
I wanted to make a comment about knowing the answer by reading ahead. So for me, it was an online activity. And, after meeting quite often with Annelise, I understand that we really want them to get the right answer before they move ahead. So if that also means that maybe the next question gives it up, it actually makes sense for them to understand the process of statistical investigation. So for me, I actually did 2 statistical investigations. My second one was the contagious yawn, and that was after discussing it with my mentor that we want the students to understand the process. And I think that the first time we do it, it's not clear to anyone, not even to us, how that's going to go. But the whole process is we have experience doing a statistical investigation, and now we want our students to gain that experience. So understanding the correct answer before they move on, that was the requirement for my homework. They have unlimited attempts to get it right and then move to the next question.
I think also, sorry.
It's
Sure.
okay,
Dr.
Karen.
Shani, and then we'll go to Karen. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say I use the same method. Like by working with Annalise, she suggested that I had some questions where I might have given the answer to a future question, and so she suggested me to create different parts, like separate parts for the same activity, like a continuation. So that helped me also in my case. So the students will see the answer, in one section, but then they don't see the correct answer later, like before they move to the next section. And that's another great point that I learned from Annalise. Thank you.
Karen.
Yeah, I was just going to say also that I think that, my classes are pretty big. And if I have students working and there's only one of me in the classroom, that having it be that, as they read ahead, they have sort of confirmation that they're on the right track, makes it so that you can manage the activity in a pretty big group. And if they don't understand or they had the wrong answer, they realize it and you can go help the people who need help. But the people who might not be confident when they read that, they're like, oh yeah, we're on the right track, it keeps them going, as opposed to having everybody sort of stop and wait because they're not sure if they're on the right track. So I actually, I thought that was an interesting point, and I think that maybe it's different in a classroom to some extent that's smaller, but I think that, for me, having the answers as part of the activities is part of what makes it doable in a really big group of students.
Wonderful. Well, thanks everybody. This has been really great to hear your thoughts. I'll just wrap things up with a few concluding remarks. Many of you, if not most or all of you, are on our Google Groups listserv. And I just want to encourage you that, we've been primarily using that to promote things like this panel and the EA Post Scholars Program and upcoming workshops. But as someone just mentioned I think Beth said in the chat, our hope is that listserv can also be a place to have these kind of conversations. So feel free to just send a message to that listserv, the EA Post Google group, with a question. Hey, here's how this went, or what do you think about this idea, or whatever. We can have some of these kind of dialogues there with a bunch of folks who are kind of like-minded and in similar situations. So please do that. Relatedly, if you're not on that, or you have colleagues who are not, please share that information with them. You can either email me. There's probably a better way to just like click a link and get enrolled. But you know, and then Beth would like me to put that on the slide instead of my email address. But I wasn't sophisticated enough or fast enough to do that, so just email me. But we'll probably maybe distribute that at some point. But we would love to continue to expand that out again to your colleagues. Similarly, as you think about fall 2025, we do have a limited number of spots available, but you are welcome to apply again if you would like to, or encourage your colleagues and friends and counterparts to do that. And regardless of whether you participate or not, we're still here as a resource through just an email. I hope you connected with those mentors, reach out to them by email again, reach out through the listserv, or otherwise, we're happy to continue answering questions and supporting you as you continue to innovate in your classrooms. Final comment is we do have an upcoming workshop live in person at ISI-Stats in Ames, Iowa. I don't know if any of you will be there, but if you are, even if you don't come to the workshop, feel free to stop by and say hi in person. We do so much virtual. It's kind of exciting. I haven't been to a stats conference now probably in a number of years, so I'm excited to get to all come to my new home state. Used to be in New York, but now it's in Michigan. Now it's in Iowa. So we'll see you, some of you in Ames, Iowa at ISI-Stats. Otherwise, we will continue to be scheduling additional in-person and virtual workshops over the next few years as we continue to have National Science Foundation funding, which we're very thankful for. And we will promote those through the Google Groups listserv as well as other means. So with no further ado, thank you so much for coming today. Congratulations on your efforts this semester, and I hope you are able to wrap up your semester quarter well over the next few weeks, or for those of you on the quarter system, a couple months. But I'm a little bit partial to the semester system myself, so enjoy the next couple weeks, and we will see you at a future workshop or program. Thanks. Have a great day.